Good afternoon and welcome to ATG webinar Keynotes and Legends versus Symbols and Note Blocks. My name is Matt Linn. I will be your virtual host for today. This will be a brief presentation and we'll follow it up with a short Q&A session. Directly following the Q&A, we will have a quick 3-question poll. We would really appreciate your response to these. Again, it's only 3 questions, so it won't take much of your time. Okay, agenda. Many firms out there today are using Keynotes. Obviously, Keynotes were not invented by Revit. They existed long before Revit, long before AutoCAD, or computers for that matter. Revit does have a couple workflows in place to utilize the Keynotes, and today we'll take a look at both methods. So the course learning objectives for today is to learn to utilize Revit Keynotes, to create a Keynote legend, produce a symbol for the purpose of keynoting, which is simply generic annotation, and automate a note block to populate symbols of the project. And then we'll do a quick compare and contrast between the two. Okay, so the first method we'll discuss in Revit is the Keynotes and Keynote Legends. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I'm going to grab this view and I'm just going to copy my floor 1. I'm going to go ahead and rename it floor 1-keynotes. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here in my sheets. I'm going to pull these down. I'm going to go ahead and create a new sheet. And we'll rename it here. We'll go with A 2.4, and we'll just call it first floor plan Keynotes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the view we just created, kind of clean up the tabs at the top. Now, if you go to your Annotate tab, you can see there is a Keynote command located right here. And within that, there is an element keynote, a material keynote, a user keynote, and then keynote settings. So we're going to go through all of these and what's the difference between them. Okay, so we're going to start with the element keynote, okay? So you come in, you highlight an element, and you pull it down, and you can see it automatically brings you to the dialog for keynoting. You can see it is divided by construction division. Now this is the out-of-the-box version. So for this, I'm going to go to Division 9. I'm going to find the chipboard right here. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same type of thing. I'm going to use Element Keynote, which is the first option. And I'm going to point to the elevator and I'm going to find it as well. Division 14, hydraulic elevator. It's right here. So when I do that, you can see it automatically populates the keynote, which will reference the keynote text. Okay, so if I select that wall and hit Edit Type, you can see it brings up the type properties for the 4 7/8 partition. If I scroll down, you can see right here in the identity data, here's the keynote and here's the value. Okay, so it stores that, it remembers it for that element. Same thing here, if I go and I look at the type properties for the elevator, right there, it has populated the keynote for that as well. So as you know, type properties apply to all types in the project, or all instances of that type, excuse me. So if I come in and I start to keynote all other 4 7/8 walls, you can see it automatically remembers the keynote because it's a type property. It is intelligent. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is the material keynote. Okay, so the first one was element, which applied to the wall itself. Okay, this one is a material keynote. Before I go further, I should note you can use all of these and you should use all of these. You don't have to decide at the onset of the project to use element or material or user. You can use all 3 and you should use all 3 because they all reference the same database. Okay, so for material keynote, that's if you want to be a little bit more specific than just the wall. So I can zoom way in and I can point directly to the chipboard. and I can lay it down. Now you can see it brought me to the same dialog. It's all referencing the same database. And then I can select a 5/8" chipboard, and that same Keynote populates. Okay, let's do that again. I'm going to go to Material Keynote again. This time I'm going to zoom in and hover over the studs. Okay, that's the JIP, and the studs has not been assigned a Keynote yet. So you can be more specific. You can zoom in and be more specific with the Material Keynote. Okay, so for this, I'm going to come in and choose supports for the JIP, non-structural metal framing. Okay. So now that's been assigned as well. Okay, so let's take a look at this wall again. If we go back to the type properties again, the element Keynote was populated right here, which is a type property. Okay, so where are these stored? Where are the material Keynote stored? Well, let's go look at the materials themselves. So you can see this wall is made up of gypsum wallboard and metal stud layer. Those are the materials. So if I come in here, hit the ellipses, which will bring me to my material browser. Okay, the gypsum wallboard material is highlighted. And if I go to identity, you can see that Keynote was stored right there. Same thing with the metal stud layer. Jump over to the identity tab, and the Keynote has been stored right here. So it is intelligent too. It's just stored in a different place. It's not stored in the element. It's stored in the material itself. Again, both are reading the same database, and you can use either or. Okay, so if I come over here, it does remember that was JIP, and it remembers that is metal studs. So it is intelligent just like the element version. So I'll plot these right here, indicating the JIP board and the studs. Okay, now here's our final option. This is the user Keynote. The user Keynote is sort of like the dumb one, okay? It doesn't store the information anywhere, but sometimes you do need a Keynote. And so when you use Keynotes, you can use them in plan, you can use them in elevation, building section, wall section, detail, site plan, you know, virtually any view you have, you can use Keynotes. Personally, I use the user Keynote sometimes when I'm in a detail, and maybe you have some detail lines that are indicating something, but it's not really an element, nor is it a material. So in that case, it doesn't have anywhere to store that information, but you still want to use a Keynote, and you still want it to populate in your schedule. So in that case, you can use user Keynotes. Now, we're obviously not in a detail right now. We're just in floor plan. So I'm going to use this lavatory. So I'll just go ahead and browse to, let's see, plumbing. Okay, and we'll just use a simple lavatory here. So it recognizes the Keynote. It has a value. It's just not stored to anything. It's not attached to that lavatory in any way. Again, great for detail lines. Okay. In this project, we have several different types of Keynotes that you can use. You can see this is the Keynote number. I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. Oh, there's only one of those. Sorry, I selected the wrong one. Here we go. Now I'm going to select all of them in the view, grab that one as well. And now if you can see, it gets rid of the box. That's just the Keynote number. Or you can do the Keynote box large or small, or you could do the Keynote text if you want. And you could do different things in different views, or you could use a combination of all four in the same view if you want. It doesn't really matter. It's all referencing the same database. All right, now we're going to make the Keynote legend. So it's a schedule that's scheduling all of your keynotes and your Keynote text. And you can see this is the default values for the fields, the key value and the Keynote text, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I'm just going to accept these and say, OK. And you can see it is now scheduled all of the keynotes that are in the project. Just like with any schedule in Revit, you can adjust the graphics. I'm just adjusting the width so we can see it more clearly. All right, so now I'm going to go to the sheet I made at the beginning of the presentation. And I'm going to pull on the view that I made, as well as the schedule. Okay, so I come up here, find the view, pull it on. Same thing, I'm going to go to the legends. It is under the legends, even though it's actually a schedule. And I want to plop it right here. Okay, so the key values are kind of doubling up. I'm going to clean that up by going back to the schedule itself, making it a little bit wider, maybe 1.5 inches. Okay, so now you can see it automatically creates the schedule of your keynotes with the key value and the keynote text. Okay, now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to grab floor 2 and duplicate it as well. And I'll rename it as well. Floor 2 keynotes. Okay, I'm going to come here. I'm going to make another sheet as well. That size is sufficient. I'm going to rename it to the second floor keynotes. Okay. So now let's go. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this right onto the sheet while we're here. Okay. I'm also going to come back here and I'm going to copy this. Now I'm using Revit 2020. If you're using Revit 2019 or previous, you can't do this. But in Revit 2020 and 21, you can grab legends and you can copy paste them. So from here, I can just say paste to current view and it'll snap to the exact same spot. Pretty handy. It was a good upgrade for 2020. All right, so I'm going to come into this view now and I'm going to lay down a few more keynotes. Okay, annotate tab. I'm going to do element keynote. Hover over the column, plop it down. Go to 03 concrete, structural concrete, and we'll guess it's a 12 by 12 column. That's great. Okay, I'm going to come back and do another one. We'll do this window right here. Okay, so now in this tree, you can see it goes several deep, and I'm in the wrong section. So I'm going to come back out here, go to openings, and you can see it goes from openings to metal windows down to aluminum windows, and I can keep going. I can specify sill, jamb, head jamb, sill, fixed jamb, mullion. I can get extremely detailed, which is great if you're in a detail, but if you're in a floor plan, you probably don't want to be that detailed. You just want to call it the aluminum window. So you don't have to go all the way down the tree. You can simply say, I just wanted to say aluminum windows. So I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm just going to accept the 085113. Okay, so let's come back, take a look at our schedule again. Now you can see it at the top, it's added these two I just added, which is the 12 by 12 column and the aluminum window. It also has the other 4 keynotes that we tagged in the first floor plan. So every keynote in the project is indicated everywhere you have the schedule. Okay, I'm just going to clean that up so it's all in one line, move it over. Same thing with the other sheet. I'm going to just move it over a bit. Okay, so this is the other view. Again, you can see it has all 6 keynotes in the schedule, even though only 4 of them are on this sheet. So this is one method you can do. You can have your legend show all of them, regardless of what's on the sheet. Okay, let's go back in. And I'm gonna hit filter. Now right down here in the filter tab, you can see there's an option to filter by sheet. So if you only wanna see the keynotes that's on that sheet in your legend, you can come down here and hit this filter by sheet. Okay, and most people have 2 keynote legends in their project, one which encompasses all the notes, which they usually put towards the front of the set in like a general sheets notes or something. And then they have another one, which is filtered by sheet, which leans it up to only the keynotes on that sheet, which is great for plans or elevations or any other sheet besides the general one. So I'm going to go ahead and hit filter by sheet. You can see all the data is still here in the schedule, but if we go back to the sheet, it only shows, here we got the window and the column. It's got the window and the column here too. We jump back to the first floor. This one we had the 4 7/8 partition, which was the gypboard, the framing, the elevator, and lavatory. Okay, so that's your filter by sheet option. Okay, so let's take a look at Keynote settings now. Okay, here's the database right here. It is a text file, and it gets established when you install Revit on your machine. Okay, there's also a numbering method. We are currently numbering by Keynote. You could also number by sheet, okay? So this is by Keynote. You can see it has the actual key value in it. Now, if you want to do it by sheet, you can see that's Keynote. You can click this, and then you get a numerical value, 1 through 4. So you come down here, it has 1 through 4. And you can take the box off. You could choose one of the others if you want. So here's the other sheet. It also has a 1, 2. So, at this point, there are 2 Keynote 1s. There are 2 Keynote 2. You just need to be aware of that. If you go this route, it starts the numerical values over on each and every sheet. If you don't want that, it's probably best to use the key value method. Okay, again, here's when it says at library locations, it's going to your hard drive and it's looking to that location, which is where it is installed when you put Revit on your machine. Okay, so I'm going to copy that path, paste it here to the Windows, and open that file. And you can see all this is a text file. Okay, so it has every option in here. Now, obviously, it doesn't dump all these in your project. It only grabs the one that you're using in your project. Okay, you can see it gets very specific, but they are divided by division. So if you're the type of firm who does like to be very specific with your keynotes, you may just want to use this out of the box because it is very, very detailed. Now, if I come back up here, you can see here's Division 6, Wood, Plastics, Composites. And in the dialog, all of the keynotes that were part of Division 6 were laddered or stepped underneath. And how you do that is you take that Division 6 and you tab and you put it at the end of wherever you want it to nest under. Okay, so this maintenance of wood, plastics, and composite will nest under Division 6. These will nest under this 06010. Okay, so you can control the laddering effect of it. Okay, if you don't want to use the out-of-the-box method, you can create your own keynotes that are specific to your firm and your standards. Okay, so here's an example. This is one that I created, but it has, it's not quite as specific. It's a little bit more generalized and brings you to the spec or to the detail or whatever. Okay, but it's kind of the same method. It is broken down by division and then has a little like 07 point and a quick description of that keynote. Now, again, this is just something I came up with. You can do anything that suits your company standards the best. So I'm going to come in here real quick and select all instances in the entire project. And I delete it. Okay, so I just deleted all the keynotes. And as you would expect, that schedule shows nothing now because they've all been deleted. Okay, I'm going to come back in here, and as opposed to going to library location, I'm just going to go select the file that I want, which is that example that I just showed you. Okay, modified keynotes. So the reload successful. Okay, so now it has a new database that it's referencing. Okay, I'll show you real quick. If I were to come in and say Keynote, element Keynote, point to, I'm just going to grab this door. Okay, so here's the new list. And you can see they're all nesting just as you would expect. So here's my openings. I don't have anyone called door because I typically rely on door numbers for that. So I'll just say division 8 openings, which will be fine. Now, if you recall, we switched that to the numerical keynote. That's why it says 1. You can always go back and forth. It doesn't matter. So if I said by keynote, it'll now say division 8 or whichever one you select in the dialog. Okay, I'm going to open Excel now because I showed you 2 text files. You don't have to use the text file to modify these databases. In fact, I kind of prefer Excel, and most people probably do. It's more organized. Now you can see you have to switch to all files here in order to see it. Otherwise, it's just looking for Excel files. Okay, so I can open the modified text, which will bring me to this text import wizard. Now for me, I typically just use the default. So I'm just going to hit next, next, and finish, which brings all the notes up and puts them in the columns. So I'm going to pull them out here just so I can see them a little better. But you can see column A has all of the keynote, and column B has all the keynote text, and C has how they are nested. Okay, so rows 2 through 9 will be nested under division 2 because that's in column C. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more intuitive to do it this way. So I typically use Excel. And then if you do it this way, you just need to remember to save it back as a text. You don't want to save it as an XLS. Okay. If you do that, just make sure you can come back and reload. If you make any changes, you do have to reload it every time you make a change to the text file. Okay, so that was the Keynotes version. Now let's take a look at the other version, which is symbols and note blocks. All right, we're going to go through somewhat the same cycle. I'm going to duplicate the floor plan again. I'm going to rename it. This time I'll say it's floor 1 symbols. Okay, and now I'm going to make a new family. Okay, when you do a new family, come up here, go to annotations, and what you want is the generic annotation. Okay, generic annotation is the same thing as a symbol in the RVT or the Revit project environment. Okay, anytime you want a symbol in your RVT, all you do is you make a generic annotation RFA or family. Okay, so when you open it up, it looks like this. It gives you a little note here. You can read it. It says delete this note. Okay, no problem. From here, I'm going to go back to the Create tab and make a label, which is right here. And I'm going to zoom way in so I verify I get right in the middle of those crosshairs. Okay. Now, out of the box, the generic annotation does not come stock with parameters. Okay, so if you want parameters, which we do, you're going to have to create them within the generic annotation family. Okay, so you do that with this little button right here. It says add parameter. And I'm going to call this the note number. Okay, it is a family parameter. We're going to want it to be instance, so we're not having to make new types. Okay, this will be a text parameter. We can group it under anything, but text seems logical. And we have a parameter. Okay, we're going to need another one. We're going to need the text, the value for it. Okay, so I made another new parameter, and we'll call this the note content. Same thing. This will be a text type parameter, and it'll be instance, so we don't have to keep making new types. And for this specific label, what we want is the note number. right? Because that's what's going to end up in your tag, which is ultimately what we're doing here. We're creating the tag. Okay, so the sample value here, let's go ahead and change that to, I usually put a big number in there like 99. Now, if you think you'll have more than 100 keynotes, go ahead and put 999, just so you get, the sample value shows you your biggest one. Okay, now I like to pull these in because if you left it out, you could have a really long, name, but it's usually just going to be a number. So I'm going to pull that in. Now, personally, I like to go with a transparent background as opposed to opaque, because depending on your zoom level, sometimes your text will kind of hide the graphics of your tag itself. But it's totally up to you. So I'm going to switch this to transparent for me. Okay, and now we can draw, however you want your note to look, or your symbol, I should say. So I'm going to go back to the Create tab, go with the line, and I'm going with the inscribed polygon, and 6 sides sounds good. And then you just draw your shape. What do you want your tag to look like? All right, so I'm going to make this 1/8 of an inch, so it's a 1/4 inch wide total. Okay, so here's our new tag, which is a generic annotation, which is a symbol. Okay, so go ahead and save it somewhere. I'll just save it on my desktop for now, and we'll call this Keynote symbol. Okay, we'll save that, load and close. Okay, so we have loaded the note into our project. Okay, let's go back to the floor plan now. And so now, as mentioned, anytime you have a generic annotation family, it translates into a symbol. So that's where we go. We go find the symbol, which is under the Annotate tab. And then over here at the right, here are our symbols. Okay. And then I'm going to go to the type selector. These are the 4 symbols we have in the project, but we want the Keynote symbol. I'm going to come and paste that right over here. Now you can see it comes in with a question mark, which means it doesn't have a value. You can give it a value. Okay, here's another thing. Generic annotation or symbols have an additional function in that you can add leaders to them, which is why they obviously make good keynotes if you want to go that route. Okay, you can add as many leaders as you want. You can see you just keep hitting that plus and they'll just keep adding them. If you don't need that many, you can just hit reverse and it'll take them off in the reverse order that you added them. All right, so now I'm just adjusting my graphics here, pushing and pulling. Okay, I'm going to push this over to the wall. And I'm going to go ahead and add the arrowhead of 20-degree filled. That seems to be fairly common among a lot of firms. And then I'll just give this a value of 1. Okay. Now you can see right off the bat, this is not intelligent. It's not referencing anything. I'm just giving that tag itself whatever number I want. This is more like, it's kind of more like AutoCAD in that respect. Okay. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna bring a symbol down here, and I'm gonna add a leader to point to the elevator. All right, and I'm going to give it a value of 2. Okay, this one, I'm just simply going to copy it around. Okay, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to point at that wall. Copy one, point at it. Let's see, I'm going to actually just switch the direction of this leader. So it's pointing to the other wall. Again, they're all 4 7/8 partitions, so they should be the same. So 1 makes sense. All right, I'm going to copy this one down and give it a number 3, and then point it to the column. Okay, and you can see over here, these are the parameters we made in the family. And because we made them instance, we can do them right here in properties. Had we made those type parameters, then we would have had to go and make a new type and adjust them in the type properties. All right, so let's go, we'll make a new sheet, 22 by 34. Okay, we'll give it a new sheet number. We'll give it a new name, which will just be floor plan symbols. Okay, so with that, I am going, let's see, going to go ahead and pull the view onto the sheet, like so. Okay, now what do we need? We need a schedule, right? We need to schedule the ones we have right here. So if you go to the View tab and Schedules, you can see the fifth one down is called Note Block. A note block simply schedules generic annotations or symbols. Okay, so we'll make a new note block. Let's see, you can give it a name. We'll just go ahead and accept the default here. Say okay. Now these look, okay, so these are the standard fields that come with all note blocks. Oh, you know what? I missed a step here. I'm going to go back. Go back to note block. Okay, see, I forgot to select the family. The Keynote symbol family is the one we created. So I need to select that first, and then the name can be whatever it wants. So we'll go ahead and leave note block for that. And now you can see we have two more fields. The two more fields are the ones we created as family parameters in the tag itself. Okay, and those are really the ones we want in the schedule. We want the note number and the note content. So I'll drag those over like so and say okay. And here we have our note block, which is simply a schedule of symbols. And as you saw, it can be any symbol you want. Okay, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to pull it onto the sheet. Adjust some of the column widths here so they make more sense. Okay. All right, so you can see we have 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, right? Because that's all of the symbols we have in the project. We have 5 symbols. So I'm going to call this first one just a painted chipboard wall. The second one, I don't remember, so I'm going to go look. That was the elevator. So I'm going to give values to 1, 2, and 3 according to what they are. Okay. Jump back here. Number 3 was a column. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my note block, and in the number 3 aisle, or row, I should say, I'm going to say concrete column, RE structural. Okay. So we have all 5. It says 1, 2, 1, 1, 3. Again, that's not a real clean look, is it, for your legend? You don't want it. We want all the ones to be the same thing, right? And we don't want it listed 3 times either. So we can come in here. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this value, this chipboard. I'm going to copy it to all of them, the number 1s first. Okay, so now at least they all have values. All right, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to sort them by number. This 1, 2, 1, 1, 3 makes no sense. So we can simply sort by note number. If we say okay to that, you can see now at least they're in order. 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, they're in numerical order, but it still doesn't make sense to show that number 1 3 times. So also under sorting and grouping, right down here, you can see it says itemize every instance. So the default is that's checked, which shows every single symbol that you have in the project. Okay, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to uncheck it and say, okay, which leans that up to, just one number one. Okay, so we went through two basic methods that Revit provides. Let's talk about them and compare them real quick. Okay, so let's first talk about the keynotes and the keynote legends. Pros, all pros in my opinion. You can see I'm pretty biased. I do prefer the, out of the box keynote version, or out of the box with your own text file, I should say. It is a great way to uphold company standard, and it's a great way to tie the spec to your drawings. If you go through and you're with your spec writer, or perhaps you are the spec writer, you guys can come up with a list that really pulls your specs and your drawings tight together. Okay, what's a con? If you do not use the out-of-the-box version, someone must spend some time in the beginning to produce a master keynote text file. Okay, if you think about it, I mean, it's sort of a con, but in this instance, you're only doing it one time for all projects from this point forward. So again, in my opinion, it's all pros for that one. Okay, symbols, which is generic annotation, and note blocks. Pros, it is a little bit closer to AutoCAD, which, especially those who are new to Revit may find some comfort in that. The learning curve is mild. It's not too difficult. Okay, the con is it's not a smart tag, right? Information is not stored. It's not stored in an element or a material or anything. It's simply whatever you're typing in. Okay, so it will not remember those values. There is no intelligence built in. In addition, you do have to, kind of start over with each project. So you don't have like a database out of the gate. You have to come back and start fresh with each project. Okay, but again, some people do prefer that, and that's perfectly acceptable. Okay, so this concludes the webinar portion of the keynotes and keynote legends versus symbols and note blocks. Okay, do we have any questions? And I see some questions have popped in, so I'm going to kind of address them one by one. Okay, keynotes have boxes around them on the drawing. Can those boxes be put on the legend too? So when it comes to the keynote legend, it is just like a schedule. So any, all the functionality you have in graphics of a schedule also apply to your keynote legend. Okay, it has always seemed to, here, I'm going to pull this over here so everyone can see it. Can everyone see this, or just me? Either way, I'll just read the questions out loud if you can't see it. It has always seemed to be that being able to accurately manage data through the text files seems like the better quality decision to make for keynotes and Revit. Have you ever encountered a scenario where note blocks is actually preferred or desirable method? Okay, great question, Adam. And I agree with you. My preference is the text file keynote version because, as you mentioned, it has a much higher quality. Quality control is great. Like I said, some people who are new to Revit do find a little bit more comfort in the note blocks because it's just a little, it's more like AutoCAD, and some people like that. Okay, can you add other parameters to keynotes like you can with generic annotation? I don't think so. Out of the box, keynotes gives you just the 2 parameters, and I don't think you can add other parameters to it. Okay, we couldn't see symbol around the numbers in your note block. We couldn't see the symbol around the number in your note block. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that means. Is it possible to show the symbol? Yeah, again, I'm still not completely clear on what that question is. But when you do create a symbol, you can make it look like whatever you want. You just want to make sure you use a parameter that's reporting the value, and then you can use line work to make it look like whatever you want it to look like. Okay, so I hope that helps. Let's see, did one more pop in? Okay, I think the question is that they want to see the note block symbol in the schedule of numbers. Oh, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. I don't think that's possible because it is like it's like a traditional Revit schedule, which is limiting, which is unfortunate. That would be great if you could see the little hexagon in the schedule itself. Unfortunately, Revit schedules do not have that function as of today. Okay, and then there's the question repeated again. There was a hexagon around the number. Does it show up in the legend? And unfortunately, it does not. Okay, with that, I am going to, thanks for your time here. I hope this was valuable to you. And with that, we'll go ahead and end the polling, and I will go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you, everyone.